Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something I think many of you know well.
Oh, yeah, that feeling.
That feeling of learning a language, right? The
Mhm.
whole perplexing, sometimes frustrating journey.
Definitely. And we've got some great stuff you shared to look at bits from a Cambridge vocabulary book, a doc about the main challenges.
And 2 audio recordings, too, yeah, with personal stories.
Exactly. Experiences and some perspectives on learning.
So the plan today, our mission, is really to dig into all this.
Yeah, pull out the key things about the common hurdles you might hit when you're learning a new language.
And maybe find some strategies that actually work.
Hopefully. And also just, reassure you that feeling stuck, totally normal. Everyone goes through it.
Okay, let's get into it then. These sources you sent, they immediately flag some big difficulties.
Right off the bat, the Cambridge one asks, what's hardest about English?
And lists the usual suspects: vocabulary, speaking, grammar.
Reading, writing, pronunciation, all the big ones.
Then that other document, the challenges one, it kind of expands on that, doesn't it?
It does. It talks about mastering all these different bits, the whole mental gymnastics of translating
Translating in your head. Yeah.
and worrying about mistakes. Always the mistakes.
It's a big one. And the Cambridge resource mentions something interesting there, too, about, like, changing words between languages.
Yeah, which sounds simple, but it's actually,
Yeah.
it's deep, isn't it? Languages don't just line up perfectly.
Not at all. The way concepts are, I don't know, carved up, it's different.
Exactly. Different ways of seeing the world, expressed differently.
Which leads us really nicely into that first audio track, 6A.
Ah, yes, the French teacher's story.
Right. They talk about starting French and just feeling totally swamped by vocabulary.
Which, who hasn't felt that? So many words.
But what's interesting is they said their classmates, they struggled more with pronunciation.
See? Right there. Just how personal this all is.
Totally. What's a huge mountain for you might be like no big deal for someone else.
Depends on your first language, maybe.
Yeah.
What sounds are familiar, what are totally alien.
Yeah, or just how you learn best, your own, strengths.
But then, and this is the really fascinating bit from track 6A.
The year abroad.
Yes. Living in France. It completely shifted their view on what actually matters.
Suddenly, it wasn't about knowing every single word or grammar rule.
Nope. It was about just communicating. Basic survival, almost.
Like ordering coffee, finding a flat, stuff you have to do.
Exactly. And they couldn't easily understand people speaking naturally at speed. That became the real hurdle.
That feeling of just not getting it. It's tough.
He called it a very real language barrier. And it wasn't about lack of vocabulary, not really. It was about using it, understanding it in real time.
That difference between knowing stuff like passively
Mm-hmm.
and actually doing something with it, using the language.
It's a huge leap. You can know thousands of words, but if you freeze up or can't follow a conversation,
Then it doesn't help much in that moment, does it?
not really. Which makes you think about those common errors the Cambridge resource mentioned.
Oh, yes. Like say, speak, talk, tell. Those always trip people up.
They really do. And it shows it's not just about how many words you know.
It's about knowing how and when to use them, right? The subtle differences.
Precisely. The error warning section in that resource really gets into it.
Like you say something, often quoting.
Right, or you speak a language, or maybe you speak to an audience a bit more formal.
Talk is more casual, isn't it? Just chatting.
Yeah, generally. And tell is usually about giving information to someone.
Nuances. They're tricky even when you're quite advanced, I think.
Definitely. So, okay, we've got this picture of like initial overwhelm, the knowing-doing gap, these subtle word issues.
So what helps? Let's look at the second audio, track 6B. It offers some advice.
Yeah, advice on being a good language learner. And one key thing they suggest is, stepping away from just the textbook.
And focusing more on fluency.
Exactly. Which ties right back to the French teacher's experience, doesn't it?
It really does. Get out there and talk.
That's the message. Interact with native speakers as much as possible.
Even if it's not perfect.
Especially if it's not perfect. The focus shifts from pure accuracy to just, connecting, getting your meaning across.
Makes sense. And track 6B also mentioned good teachers, didn't it?
It did. Saying a good teacher is often someone who's learned another language themselves.
So they get it. They understand the struggle from the inside.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Empathy and being able to explain things clearly, obviously.
That teacher perspective is interesting. And they also mention how their own first language causes specific problems for learners.
Right. Like maybe certain sounds are really hard for English speakers learning their language.
It reminds us that the challenges aren't universal. They depend heavily on the languages involved.
Absolutely critical point. Spanish to Italian might be smoother sailing in pronunciation than, say, English to Mandarin.
Totally different sound systems, different structures.
The specific hurdles really vary.
Okay, so let's try and wrap some of this up. What are the big takeaways here for you, the learner?
Well, it seems like language learning is,
Mm-hmm.
it's complex. It's got lots of layers.
You might start worrying about vocabulary or getting the grammar right.
But
Mhm.
quite often the goal kind of shifts, doesn't it? Towards just being able to communicate effectively, fluency.
And that whole fear of making mistakes.
It seems like you almost have to make them. It's part of it. Getting too hung up on perfection can actually slow you down.
Yeah, it can stop you from even trying to speak.
Exactly. And that real world practice, talking to people, hearing the language used naturally.
Even if it's scary at first.
Yeah, it seems absolutely essential for bridging that gap, going from just knowing about the language to actually using it.
So, a final thought then. Think back to when you first started learning a new language, those early challenges you faced.
What were they for you?
How does hearing about these experiences, these different perspectives, how does that resonate with you now?
Maybe thinking about that difference between, say, drilling vocab lists and feeling confident chatting.
Or that feeling when native speakers talk so fast.
Right. Maybe reflecting on that gives you a slightly different angle on your own language journey. Something to consider.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.